Hey folks, it's Rob, and welcome back to our 13th part on the Dungeon Master's Rulebook, where we're still in the middle, well, I would not say in the middle anymore, of reading about the monsters in the rulebook. We left off last time at R, you know, could be doing worse. There are more letters, of course, but not that much more in the way of pages. Interesting to see this much art for Wolf over here. Again, the concepts of what is important for art and what isn't seems to be concerning. But I'm guessing this is our penultimate monster episode, and then we're going to move on to treasure and the final concepts in the book. And at that point, I'll need to move on to a new project. But uh, so far, so good, right? uh, hmm. Right. Well, let's get on. Rat. So, uh, I imagine you're familiar with rats. If you don't not familiar, these are fairly common creatures. Not the giant rats, admittedly, unless you happen to live in certain parts of the world. Um, Starting level adventurers and general set dressing, right? There, we had a rat encounter in the first solo adventure. They're not useless. They are actually can be quite good setting items. They're not really that dangerous unless somehow there a mass of them, but they're not that strong in morale. They're not really that interested in fighting you. Um, Hard to say exactly. Well, let's get into the stats, right? So armor class 9 for a regular rat, 1 hit point. No hit die, just 1 hit point. And I'm going to say here, again, there's a printing error. So, like, this is shifted down one element and cuts off the XP value on here just to get started. Uh, so, if you read straight across, it says hit dice 9. That's not correct. That's armor class 9, hit dice 1 hit point. Uh, Again, this is 1983. Um, the XP value for the giant rat, I think, was like 5. It's actually in the solo adventure, right? When we awarded XP for killing them at the end of the solo adventure, right? Um, Regular rats, maybe 1 XP. You know, um, not really something that you would award a lot of XP for, right? Um, let's see here. After the battle, where was it? There should be a chart in here. Yeah, giant rats are 5 each, right there. Um, so their move is 60 by 20. Uh, One swimming, 30 by 10. Interesting. Gives swimming stats. I don't think we've had a swimming stat before. Uh, Damage by a bite per pack. 1 bite per the entire for a whole pack of rats. Number appearing 1 to 6, and disease is not the number appearing. That is the damage. Number appearing is 5 to 10, or 2 to 20 in their lair makes less sense, right? They save as normal man. Their treasure type is L. They have a morale of 5. They're neutral because they're animals, right? On the giant rat, AC 7, slightly harder to hit. They are 1 to 4 hit points on a half hit die. So, roll that D4 or split a D8, rounding, to a whole number. Uh, Move is faster at 120 by 40 or 60 by 20 while swimming. Each one bites instead of the whole pack. But the bite damage is 1 to 3 and a disease chance, which can be quite unpleasant. Uh, 3 to 18 appear, or 3 to 30 in their lair. That makes more sense in my book. Save as normal man. Morale 8. They're a little more fierce because they're giant rats. still not terribly fierce. They are treasure type C in their lair, and they are neutral. Again, they're animals. Rats usually avoid humans and will not attack unless summoned by a were-rat, for example, or defending their lair. Rats are good swimmers and may attack while in water. They are afraid of fire and will run from it unless forced to fight by a summoning creature. Rats will eat almost anything, and some rats carry diseases. Anyone bitten by a rat has a 1 in 20 chance of being infected, so 5% chance. This chance should be checked each time a rat successfully hits. If diseased, the XP award is 6. The victim may still avoid the disease by making a saving throw versus poison if failed. The victim may die in 1 to 6 days, 1 in 4 chance, or may be sick in bed for 1 month, unable to adventure. You know, if you want to kill your party member by disease, okay. Doesn't sound like high adventure to me, but that's a good way to like write a character out of the next adventure. But he'll be back, right? Fred couldn't turn up for the next session, so he's got rat poison. He's got rat disease. Normal rats. Normal rats have gray or brown fur and are from 6 inches to 2 feet long. They attack in packs of 5 to 10. If there are more than 10 rats, they will attack several creatures as packs of 10 or less. A pack will only attack one creature at a time. Rats will climb all over their creature they are attacking, often knocking the victim down. So that you'd need to make some kind of adjudication as to the knocking down and what the character is able to do when they're knocked down. If it's like an NPC or a retainer, maybe they're more panicky because they're not adventurers by and large. Although you can hire character retainers, with actual stats and skills. But like if it's John, the guy who holds the mule, he ain't fighting unless he has to, and then he's swarmed with rats, and he's going to be like, I quit, Giant rats. These creatures are 3 feet long or more and have gray or black fur. They are often found in dark corners of dungeon rooms and in areas with undead monsters. All right. Robber fly. I mentioned this before in a previous episode. I believe when we mentioned insects. Nice to have a bit of art. I guess it helps. It looks a bit like a dragonfly, right? AC 6, hit dice 2, move 90 by 30, but that's on the ground, flying 180 by 60. They attack by a bite. The damage they do when they bite is 1 to 8. Number pairing 1 to 6 or 2 to 12 at their, well, I'm going to say hive because really insects don't tend to have layers. Save as fighter 1, morale 8, treasure type U back at the lair, alignment neutral, XP value 20. A robber fly is a 3 foot long giant fly with black and yellow stripes. From a distance, robber flies look like killer bees. They are carnivores and may attack adventurers. However, they prefer killer bees as food and are immune to their poison. Robber flies are patient hunters. They often hide in shadows and wait to surprise prey 1 to 4 on a d6. A robber fly can leap up to 30 feet and attack with its bite. So, use some creative license here. This definitely sounds like a wilderness encounter, or in some kind of like underground environment, right? Like there's water and there's some kind of artificial or natural light source, and there's like a lot of fungi or plants of some kind, and then there's like an ecosystem around it, right? Some kind of massive underdark kind of cave or lost world setting again. This version of the game is rife with the lost world connections because that was a kind of popular thing in the 70s and beforehand, right? In movies and in television, some cartoon shows like Thunder the Barbarian isn't really Lost World, but it is like this like post-apocalyptic mismatch of everything. Personal favorite of mine, which is why I mention it. The Rust Monster. which we've encountered previously, and we actually had a picture of again in the other book. So I'll forgive not having a picture of it. But this is definitely one of the more different and unique monsters that you get in this earlier edition of the game. Uh, Armor class 2, really hard to hit. Hit dice 5 asterisk. Move 120 by 40. It has one attack. Damage is C below, right? Number appearing 1 to 4. I guess like maybe like again like with the owl bear, maybe there's like a breeding pair. Maybe there's like cubs. What they, in the Dragon magazine once back in the day again, there used to be articles of like the ecology of whatever monster. I wonder if there was an ecology of the rust monster because um, those were always good reading in my book. I always enjoyed reading those articles. I always found them terribly clever and useful because you have these fictional creatures. I remember reading one about blink dogs, which we haven't described here. But those that was certainly something that you could do in the magazine back in the day, and we had no other means of like they weren't putting out splat books of like the rust monsters, right? Eventually, they did come up with like Creature Crucible and things like that, but that was just more monsters. And the when they come out with the Monstrous Compendium for second edition Dungeons and Dragons, they do give each monster its own page, and so have to work a little harder to fill it out. But you know, there was no internet forum to go to for like, how do you use rust monsters, right? So if you were to, encounter one, there's my 1 to 4 of them. Save as fighter 3, morale 7, treasure type nil. They won't have treasure apparently. I don't know. They don't. The rust monster destroys metal. It doesn't destroy gems per se. Although some gems are technically metallic. Use your judgment. Morale 7. Alignment neutral. Kind of an animal. It's an enchanted animal though, right? XP value 300. A rust monster has a body like a giant armadillo with a long tail and 2-foot-long feelers antennae. If a rust monster hits a character with its antenna, it will cause any non-magical metal armor or weapon hit to immediately crumble to dust. It may be hit by any type of weapon, and a successful hit roll indicates that the body is hit, for no ill effect to the weapon used. A rust monster is attracted by the smell of metal. It eats the rust created by its attacks. A magical armor or weapon struck usually loses 1+ per hit, but has a 10% chance per plus of resisting the effect completely. So, for example, a shield +1 has a 10% chance of surviving the attack. If 11 or greater is rolled on a d10, the shield is reduced to a normal shield. If hit again, it crumbles into dust. So, that's fairly devastating depending on your campaign of like my wonderful you're probably not going to have a +3 or +4 anything at this level of play. First off, if you have a +2, you're doing fantastic. So if you have a +1 shield, that's a nice advantage to have, or a +1 weapon. But then it gets this, you use it to defend against the rust monster, and it loses its magic ability and just becomes a normal shield or sword. That hurts. It hurts in a way that old school Dungeons and Dragons used to hurt you, like taking levels away, killing people indiscriminately. Oh, well, let's take away your metal armor. Let's take away your magic items, right? We had that in the solo adventure of Rust Monster, right? We had that. That Rust Monster was not without treasure as well. It just, it was, there it is. There's a nice piece of art for it. That was well worth having, right? again, thank you for the art. This is, I mean, I couldn't ask for more for for a description, right? Funny how it has this like you never would have expected to have this kind of like wingnut tail, but it does. Apparently, it does in this depiction. In fact, it's less armadillo-like you might have originally imagined, and I like that to kind of sell it. But like in that encounter, if you defeated the rust monster, there were some gems to be found amongst the rust. This is not an easy encounter unless the party's prepared for it. Now, if they have leather armor and they have some wooden clubs, or they, use a lot of ranged attacks somehow in your relatively confined dungeon, maybe they can take care of it without any real trouble. But that's them using their heads and noggins, and they should be rewarded for trying and planning and working, right? Which is probably why it has a 300 XP value as well. Shadow. Now this is another one of those. Is it undead? Is it not undead? I think it's clear it's actually not undead. They are somehow. I think they're like negative plane creatures, really. Let's get into it. Shadow. Armor class 7. Hit dice 2 plus 2 asterisk. So if you add 2 to your 2 dice rolled. So, that's 4 to 4 to 18, right? Move 90 by 30, attacks 1. Their damage is 1 to 4, but there's a special. And again, we'll get into that. Number appearing 1 to 8 or 1 to 12 in their lair. Save as fighter 2. Their morale is 12. They don't have, they won't break. Treasure type F in their lair. Alignment chaotic. And their XP value is 35, which, again, most monsters in this edition of the game, I feel like the XP is kind of light for defeating the actual monster, and it's geared towards the fact that treasure is really your main XP source. Shadows are non-corporeal, ghost-like, intelligent creatures. They can only be harmed by magic weapons. They look like real shadows and can alter their shape slightly. Shadows are hard to see and usually gain surprise 1 to 5 on a d6. If a shadow scores a hit, it will drain 1 point of strength in addition to doing normal damage. This weakness will last for 8 turns, so that's 80 minutes. Any creature whose strength is reduced to 0 becomes a shadow immediately. Shadows are not affected by sleep or charm spells, but they are not undead and cannot be turned by clerics. The DM should not use shadows unless the party has at least 1 magic weapon. Well, at least they were explicit about that. Because, geez, they can't be hurt by anything the party has other than maybe the magic user has magic missile, right? They have 4 to 18 hit points each. You're going to throw at them what? 1 to 8. So you throw. Let's be nice and throw 3 shadows at the party. If they don't have magic weapons to deal with that threat, they're going to be whittled down 1 to 4 hit points at a time, 1 strength point at a time, until basically you've turned your party into shadows. Or they're just dead, right? Somehow you did 1 point of damage each time the shadow touched that guy, and eventually you managed to drain all his strength, and he became a shadow. Great. Character hands in their character sheet. Don't use monsters that the party can't deal with. That they have no chance of dealing with unless you know your party will run away. They could outrun the shadows. The shadows move 90 by 30. They are not limited to being just underground, by the way. You might find them commonly in caves or something like that, or in dungeons, but they can be anywhere, and they can go anywhere, and they are... they're not undead. You don't know what they are. They're largely immaterial. They're not quite immaterial, but they are basically 2-dimensional shadow creatures. How are you supposed to even notice that's around without being ultra paranoid, right? Set some rules as to how this works. Maybe they don't like bright light. Maybe I like to think of them as creatures of the negative material plane, but we won't even get into that in this edition of the game. Uh, that's later. The multiverse and all that kind of stuff is really beyond the scope of basic. But yeah, it, treasure type F as well. That's only in their lair, right? F isn't terrible as a treasure type. You know, there's certainly the possibility of a lot of treasure here, but it's just that it's a possibility. It's entirely possible to not get much treasure from their lair even. Again, be aware of your party's capabilities. Don't just use these because they're cool. They are cool. I mean, they're like really creepy and hard to deal with if you don't know what you're dealing with. Uh, but careful. Shrew, comma giant. Hey, we mentioned those before. Armor class 4, hit dice 1 asterisk, move 180 by 60, so they're fast. They attack with 2 bites. Damage is 1 to 6 for each bite. Number appearing 1 to 8 or 1 to 4 in their lair. Save as fighter 1, morale 10, treasure type nil. They won't have any treasure. Alignment neutral, XP value 13. Giant shrews look like brown furred rats with long snouts. They can burrow, climb, or jump up to 5 feet. The eyes of a giant shrew are so weak that the creature is not affected by light or lack of it. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's a shrew. A shrew uses radar-like squeaks to see its surroundings as bats do, and can see things within 60 feet as well as a creature with normal sight. Since it needs echoes to see, a giant shrew dislikes open areas and remains underground most of the time. A silence 15-foot radius spell will blind a giant shrew. If it cannot hear, it will be confused and then becomes AC 8 with a penalty of -4 on its hit rolls. That's a lot of spell to throw at the shrew, but maybe you got several shrews you got to deal with. A giant shrew is very quick and will always take the initiative on its first attack. It also gains a +1 bonus on its initiative roll for the remaining rounds of combat. Its attack is so ferocious, attacking the head and shoulders of the defender, that any victim of 3 hit dice, 3rd level or less, must make a saving throw versus death ray or run away in fear. It's a giant mole, but, it's a deadly giant mole. And, 3rd level or less, guess what edition of the game we're playing, right? This is the basic set. If they survive the being attacked with 2 bites at a d6 each, yeah, I mean, if you have the silence 15-foot radius spell, which is great, that's not a 1st level spell. So you're going to need like a 3rd level mage, I think. Cleric won't be able to cast it. Yeah. Shrieker. Oh, I do like including Shriekers sometimes. Shrieker. Armor class 7. Hit dice 3. Move 9 by 3. Yeah, they can move a bit. I don't usually have them move, really, because of what they are. Attacks, see below. Damage, none. Number appearing, you'll see 1 to 8. Doesn't really have a layer. Save as fighter 2. Morale 12. They're dumb. They can't be scared off. Treasure type nil. Alignment neutral. They're the site of plants because they are mushrooms. XP value 35. Shriekers look like giant mushrooms. They live in underground caverns and are able to move around slowly. They react to light within 60 feet and movement within 30 feet by emitting a piercing shriek which lasts for 1 to 3 rounds. For each round of shrieking, the DM should roll 1d6. Any result of 4 to 6 indicates a wandering monster has heard the noise and will arrive in 2 to 12 rounds. Yeah. And that's exactly how you use these. You stick them in places that basically the party bumbles into, and then they go off. This happens enough times, your party will be quite careful about how much light and how much noise and where they're moving. You know, the Shrieker itself, not actually dangerous. What comes to see the Shrieker, much more dangerous usually. Skeleton, good old skeletons, certainly a solid standby. Uh, Armor class 7, not too hard to hit. Hit die 1, not too hard to beat. Move 60 by 20, you could outrun them if you need to. Attack 1 by weapon. You will get 3 to 12 or to 3 to 30 appearing in a general encounter, although use them as you see fit. Like in the solo adventure, there's a room with 2 skeletons in it, but you are by yourself, right? This is considering usually a party of 5 to 8 players, so 3 to 12 skeletons is not an unreasonable challenge, probably. Save as fighter 1, morale 12. They don't really have morale. They are skeletons are basically unthinking monsters, so you can't scare them. No treasure, alignment chaotic. I mean, they're evil. Again, they don't really have behavior, right? They attack, they guard, they stand around. They if they encounter something, they kind of kill it. It's hard to attribute like a full alignment to them in my book because they just don't act as intelligent creatures. Animated skeletons are undead creatures often found near graveyards, dungeons, and other deserted places. They are often used as guards by high-level magic users or cleric who animated them. Since they are undead, they can be turned by clerics and are not affected by sleep or charm spells, nor any form of mind reading. Skeletons will always fight until killed. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty basic creature. And yeah, there'll be like animate dead spells later on in later versions of the game so you can make skeletons. And there's all kinds of like, Dragon Magazine articles on like, necromancy characters and doing, what you can do with skeletons in a wide variety of ways. And that's just a basic skeleton, human sized, right? Ray Harryhausen kind of skeleton. Um, Certainly, there are other options, and you can have like skeleton animal, skeleton dogs, skeleton whatever. Yeah, anything that has a skeleton basically can be an animated skeleton, but maybe to different degrees and stats, right? All of this, all of this is for snakes. All of it. 75% of this page is for snakes. It's admittedly 6 kinds of snakes, but that's a lot of snake. And, they're just like different environments, different gradients. But it's not like snakes are bad monsters to use. And we have a snake in the solo adventure. The first thing you encounter is a snake. The thing is, it doesn't fit these descriptions. It's hard to say what snake you beat, because the snake you beat was beaten quite easily. And maybe it was, I mean, we'll get into it, right? Because we have 6 snakes, I'm going to read a stat block for a snake. I'm going to read its general description down here on the column, okay? So, Spitting Cobra, armor class 7, 1 hit die but has an asterisk. It's a 90 by 30 move. Damage is 1 bite or 1 spit. Damage 1 to 3 plus poison. Number appearing 1 to 6 or 1 to 6 in its layer. It saves as fighter 1. Morale 7. Treasure type nil. Neutral alignment because it's a spitting cobra. You've seen it in Indiana Jones. XP value 13. Spitting cobra. A spitting cobra is a 3-foot-long grayish-white snake which spits a stream of venom at its victim's eyes up to a distance of 6 feet away. If the spit hits, the victim must make a saving throw versus poison or be blinded. This blindness can normally be removed only by a cure blindness spell from the D&D expert rules, but the DM may allow other methods. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. You can think of ways of maybe there's like an actual medical treatment and recovery, right? Without requiring, you know, you using higher level spells that you just don't even have access to in this basic edition of the game. As with most small poisonous snakes, a spitting cobra is not attack does will not attack human size or larger opponents unless startled or threatened. It can either spit or bite in one round, but not both. It will usually spit. The damage given, 1 to 3 points, applies only to the bite. In this case, the victim must make a saving throw versus poison or die in 1 to 10 turns. So that's a save for your life on a low-level character. Fortunately, it's mostly the spitting cobra doesn't want to be part of this fight, right? Giant Racer, armor class 5, 2 hit dice, moves 120 by 40, just as fast as your party, basically. Has a bite. The bite does 1 to 6. 1 to 6 will appear, or 1 to 8 in a lair. Saves his fighter 1 again, morale 7. No treasure. Neutral, again, it's an animal. XP value 20. So the Giant Racer, this is an average type of giant snake, about 4 foot long. It has no special abilities, but is faster than most other types. It is not poisonous, but its bite can be dangerous in itself. Larger ones may be found averaging 2 feet long per hit die and inflicting 1 to 8, 1 to 10, or even 2 to 12 points of damage per bite. So you can kind of scale up a Giant Racer to be really a more difficult or monster if you want it to be. Remember to increase the XP value if you increase the hit dice. Pit Viper, armor class 6, 2 hit dice again, but this time with the asterisk. Moves 90 by 30, a little slower. 1 bite. It's 1 to 4 plus poison. 1 to 8 appears. Fighter 1 is the save. Morale's again 7. No treasure. Neutral. Again, it's an animal. XP value 25. Pit Viper. A pit viper is a 5-foot-long, greenish-gray poisonous snake with small pits in its head. These pits act as heat sensors with a range of 60 feet. The combination of pits and infravision make it very hard to fight a pit viper. It is so quick that it always gains the initiative, no roll needed. Any victim bitten by a pit viper must make a saving throw versus poison or die. Yeah. Again, this edition of the game doesn't play around. Re-rolling and generating new characters is definitely a thing, and introducing them to the party is also a thing. Sea Snake, armor class 6, 3 hit dice with an asterisk. Move 90 by 30. Again, it's a bite. It's always going to be a bite. There's not going to be claw attacks on a snake, right? But there is one here that doesn't just do a bite, and beyond the spitting cobra, which we already did. That bite is 1 point plus poison. Number appearing 0 somehow in an encounter, or 1 to 8 in a sea snake's lair. Tell me how you have an encounter with 0 monsters in it. I'll wait. Probably a typo, right? Fighter 2, morale 7, treasure type nil again, alignment neutral, 50 XP for a 3 hit die with asterisk, sea snake. Sea snake. The sea snakes are snakes adapted to living in the sea. All are poisonous. They average 6 feet long, but can be much larger if the DM desires. 2 feet long per hit die. A sea snake's bite is little more than a pinprick and will go unnoticed 50% of the time. The victim must make a saving throw versus poison, and the poison is slow acting. Its full effects take 3 to 6 turns to be felt if the saving throw is failed. Unlike other snakes, sea snakes will attack humans for food. So the sea snakes attack. They do 1 point of damage when they hit. You might not even notice for some reason. And you might fail your poison save check and die 30 to 60 minutes later. That's wild, right? At least you get to save your goodbyes and defeat the monsters, right? But again, there's no neutralized poison spell available to the people playing this level of the game. You might have an antidote potion. And the save versus poison, while not necessarily probably the hardest save, depending on your class, is still a save and won't be, at this level of play, won't be better than 50-50. Giant Rattler, Armor Class 5, Hit Dice 4 asterisk, moves 120 by 40. That's as fast as the party. Somehow its attack is 2 bites. The damage is 1 to 4 plus poison. 1 to 4 will appear either in a field encounter or in their lair. They save as fighter 2 as well. Their morale is 8, so a little more fierce. They will have treasure in their lair, treasure type U. They are also neutral and will award 125 XP for slaying the giant rattler. And maybe you can get $5 bounty in Arizona if you bring back the skin. Giant rattlesnake. A giant rattlesnake is a 10-foot long snake with brown and white scales set in a diamond pattern. On its tail is a dried, scaly rattle, which often shakes to ward off intruders or attackers who are too large to eat. A victim of a giant rattlesnake bite must make a saving throw versus poison or die in 1 to 6 turns. This snake is very fast and attacks twice per round, the second attack coming at the end of the round. So, I suppose that means let the party have their actions if they lost the initiative, but then you get to have the second attack from the Rattler. And I guess if they defeat the Rattler before that point, you don't have to do the second attack. But it is a 5 hit die creature. Who knows where you're going to be in the combat at that point. But again, the poison or die stuff is kind of rough for modern sensibilities. But, you do you. Personally, I prefer poisons that inflict damage. Because that's more mechanically dealable for the players. But it's not like in real life that poisonous snakes aren't poisonous. They are, very much so. Venomous snakes do kill people. That's why that joke I made about $5 bounty in Arizona. I don't know if they still do that actually, but used to be able to get a bounty for killing rattlesnakes in that state. Rock python. This is the only other snake that actually has an attack that isn't just a bite. AC 6, hit dice 5 asterisk, moves 90 by 30. You could outrun it. Has 1 bite and 1 squeeze. That's right, it's the boa constrictor. 1 to 4 for the bite, 2 to 8 for the squeeze. 1 to 3 appear. I really think of these more as singular, but maybe there's like a nest. I don't think they take care of their young though. They're snakes. Fighter 3, morale 8, treasure type U at the lair. They are neutral. Again, they're animals. 300 XP for defeating the rock python. Rock python. This 20-foot long snake has brown and yellow scales set in a spiral pattern. Its first attack is a bite. If the bite is successful, it coils around the victim and constricts it in the same round. The squeezing does 2 to 8 points of damage per round and occurs automatically if the bite hits. So it bites your player, wraps itself around. I would say the next round of constriction really sets in. But apparently, if I were to take this as read right now, as written right here, the bite happens if successful, that then constricts and squeezes for a further 2 to 8 points of damage, which would kill a low level player probably. Um, but hey, it's got lunch, so it's probably not going to be interested in the rest of the party, but it may also have to fight off the rest of you. Now, the general description: snakes are found almost everywhere, avoiding only the very hot and very cold places. Most snakes do not usually attack unless surprised or threatened. Some snakes have poisonous bites, and most are carnivores. Very true. Sometimes they do enjoy a good egg, but I suppose that still makes you a carnivore, doesn't it? Um, so that catches us up through those couple pages. Next time, we got spiders and wolves and molds. Oh my. Um, I want to thank you very much for watching and listening to me rattle on as I do. Um, Thank you for being here. I appreciate your comments, likes, subscriptions, everything. Your engagement means a lot to me. I thank you all for being here for this 13th episode, and I wish you a pleasant day. Goodbye.